From Studio DRC at the Daytona Regional Chamber of Commerce, this is the Crest of the Wave. Hi, everybody, and welcome to the 5th episode of Crest of the Wave, the September 2024 edition. My name is Ken Phelps. I'm the Vice President of Resource Development here at the Daytona Regional Chamber of Commerce, and glad to welcome you all to the program. And unless you have been stranded on a desert island with no communication in any way, shape, or form, you know that we are in the middle of an election season. And so to educate our business community on all things election season, we are pleased to welcome a pair of guests today. We have Lisa Lewis, our Volusia County Election Supervisor. Lisa, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
And we're also joined by one of my colleagues here at the Daytona Regional Chamber, David Robinson, who's our Director of Advocacy. David, thanks for sitting in this morning.
Thank you. I'm excited.
All right. So let's start with the election season we're in. I mean, debates have been recent. The primary is not that long in the rear view, so we're right in the middle of it. But Lisa, can you go over? We know the general election is November 5th. We've heard that from just about every commercial we've seen on TV over the last couple of months. But what are some of the key dates coming up that voters, whether business community or general community at large, should be aware of?
Well, our first registration deadline, the deadline to register to vote, comes up August 7th. It's always 29 days before an election, so it's October 7th. I'm so sorry. So that's our first registration, the deadline. Then we move into early voting, which begins October 21st and will run through November 2nd, and it's 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. every day. That's 13 days straight that we will be open for that. The next deadline is October 24th, which is the deadline to request a vote-by-mail ballot to be mailed to you for the November election. And speaking of vote by mail, those that already have a request on file, and you can still request them, but we're mailing our first initial mailing out on September 26th. Which is the 40th day before the election, so it gives people plenty of time to study it, mark it, and turn it back into us, which can be turned into our office, through the mail, or even when early voting opens, we will have drop boxes or secure ballot intake stations at each early voting site that people may drop their ballots off. And they're brought back to the office every night.
Okay.
So that we can process them the following day.
Very good. So and that's something I was not aware of, if you have previously requested a mail-in ballot for either this year's primary or a previous election year, that's on file, and so you will always be on that list. Is that how that works, or do you need to clarify a little bit?
Before it was, we will clarify a little bit.
Okay.
Every vote-by-mail request that was on file previous to 2022 has expired. So after each general election, even number, they expire, and you have to re-request. So we did send out some note cards or postcards in 23 to those that had voted by mail, and even those that had requested prior to 22 to see if they wanted to re-request them. And we got many thousands of requests on file. As a matter of fact, our first mailing coming out on September 26th is a little over 80,000 that we will be mailing. And it's continuing to grow. People are still requesting vote by mail. And I think that they may be afraid of waiting in lines, because in a presidential election year, especially on the general election, there are going to be lines. There's a higher turnout. You know, we had 19% turnout in the August primary. We'll have upwards 75 at least % turnout in the general election.
Yeah, that's a significant number.
Yes,
and that will cause delays. I would hope that most people are aware of this, but there may be some that are not. Can you explain the differences in terms of location for when you would go to do early voting versus if you wait to vote on November 5th that you want to participate on Election Day, and the flexibility you have in terms of where you can go to cast your ballot?
Sure. During early voting, we have 8 locations around the county, and anyone can go to any one of those locations and vote during early voting. They're open to everybody in the county, registered voters. On Election Day, you do have to go to your assigned polling location, which is based on where you are registered to vote, where your home address is. So different precincts are around the county and then their location. So you have to go to that one on Election Day. But during early voting, if you happen to be over in DeLand or over in Daytona, shopping, having lunch, business meeting, one of those sites in that area is open and you're welcome to go vote. Let me get it taken care of. And I encourage people to vote early, vote by mail, because every election day, we do have several phone calls that something has happened. They're in the hospital, a family member's in the hospital, they're having to stay with them, and they cannot get to the polls. How can they vote? Now, I will tell you, if I can, we will take a ballot to them. I have employees that we do go out if it anyway, or somebody that's an emergency situation, they can send a designee to pick one up for them. But it is cumbersome, and and it's, if you're waiting until 6 o'clock that night and this happens, my hands are a little tied. But I try to do everything I can to help people to vote if they can. But so if you can go to an early voting site, you want to vote by mail to avoid the lines, please do so.
Yeah, and I think that's an important message, because you want as many people participating in this process as possible, because it is the envy of the world. Absolutely. This whole experiment of self-governance that is the United States of America is predicated on those being governed to voice their opinion at the ballot box. I think that's important, and to kind of transition to casting your vote, and to do so in an informed manner. David, let's talk a little bit about the voter guide that we put out here at the Daytona Regional Chamber. So if you could explain kind of what's included and the lens through which we look at all of our candidates and the endorsements that we provide and that kind of stuff. Because it's not the same as just general information. We've got a stance, we want to endorse people. This is particular to business. So talk a little bit about our voter's guide, what's in it, and how we approach that.
Absolutely. So here's our voter's guide that we currently have on our website at DaytonaChamber.com. So what's included in it, we have all of the candidates throughout Volusia County. At all levels. So we have from federal down to local elections. And this year we actually have candidate questionnaires. And in those questionnaires are different types of questions related to business in the community. And what we do there is kind of a way to, inform our members and just the larger public what to look for in candidates coming up for the elections. So again, this one is the primary, and we're getting ready to update it to the general election in a couple of weeks. We just thought it was really important, because a lot of people do ask us who should I vote for from a business perspective? So it just made sense to do that. And again, we really encourage the questionnaires really encourages those to look and read on their own, right? Though we can make an endorsement, but ultimately it is up to the voter to be informed. And so we just wanted to do everything possible to do that. So that's what you'll find here.
Yeah, I think it's important for people to understand this is just one resource, one place for you to go and research where does a candidate stand on particular issues. You won't find social issues in the questionnaire that we have. It was strictly about how do you approach business, how do you approach the regulations surrounding doing business in Volusia County, and I think that's important. But we do want to have that avenue, and I think it's important for people to understand too that each candidate fills out the same set of questions. So it's a great way to be able to say, okay, I'm not sure between these two candidates. You get an apples to apples comparison of their responses. It's not one set of questions for one candidate and a different set of questions for another. One of the things we did for the very first time this year, which has been an interesting process to say the least, is endorsing candidates for the first time. Share with our listeners and our viewers kind of the process of that, which races we did, and kind of your take on that whole process from start to finish, because I know it's been a journey.
Absolutely. So it was really fun. Many people watching may not know I just began this position back in November. And it's funny, I really want to do something that's impactful. I'm like, had no idea that this is going to be the year, that after the many years that the Chamber has been exploring this route, that I got the chance to kind of oversee that process and help implement it. But it's really been fun. So what we have is an advocacy task force, and in that task force is different business leaders, community leaders, gather to kind of chat about, one, who we wanted to endorse, and then two, what is included in the questionnaire. And just really, again, we wanted to be consistent, and you alluded to it earlier. You want to be consistent. The questionnaires was the best way to do that. So in the primary, we only did the state races. So we did the state Senate and the state rep in Volusia County. And then for the general elections, we're doing school board. We're doing the Daytona Beach City Commission. We're doing the Volusia County Chair and the Volusia County Council. And so what that process looked like is, first they had to fill out a questionnaire. That is step one. And then step two was, from that questionnaire, you are brought in for an interview. All candidates are able to interview, so it wasn't like, process of elimination where you filled out a questionnaire and then we just chose who we wanted to bring in. All candidates, as long as you submitted a questionnaire, you are able to interview. And then from there, we did follow-up questions. Our task force, we met in a small room, interviewed the candidates, and from there, it was a scoring rubric that we used based off of their, knowledge of business, school system, that's very, very important, obviously, workforce development, even things like housing. So many different aspects. And again, you can see it all in the questionnaires. But from there, we did a scoring rubric and then made the endorsements from those races.
Very good. So let's share a little bit about the endorsement process. When somebody's reading through the voter guide, how do they know, okay, which candidate got endorsed by the Daytona Regional Chamber or not? How are they identified in the voters guide as people are doing their research?
Absolutely. So we actually have a badge that we created especially for them, and you'll see it right next to it. Then it will say endorsed by the Daytona Regional Chamber, as well as different things, like we have a hobnob coming up, so we'll have printed things for them to have at their booths at the hobnob as well. And then they're able to, we also sent them a photo image of that, so they're able to use it on their materials, on their social media pages. Again, this is the first time doing it. And so everyone is just really excited that they, those who we did endorse, they got to be a part of it. And so they've been really excited and just, sharing it out through their social media channels.
Very good. And it's historic, because it's the first time as a chamber, we've been around for 104 years. So for this to be the first time that's done, it was a pretty significant step, and
Absolutely.
one that was not taken lightly. There was a lot of consideration in how do we do this and do it well and do it effectively. So
Absolutely.
So as maybe the topic for this election cycle, and even the last couple of election cycles, quite honestly, is election security and the processes by which ballots are taken in, reviewed, counted, and all of that kind of stuff. Lisa, tell us a little bit about that process, because now you've got early voting, you've got vote by mail, you've got voting going on the day of the election. Mm-hmm. So somebody walks into their precinct or their early voting location and they cast their ballot. What happens next?
How much time do you have?
Probably not enough, but we'll let you give it a shot.
I'm going to try and shorten it. I'm going to start with vote by mail, because that's the first method of voting that comes in an election. So when someone requests a vote by mail ballot, they have to provide certain identification numbers, only things that we would know. So they do have to provide that. So they're verified on the front end. If it's in writing, not only are those identifiers verified, then their signature is. So that's all before the ballot even goes out. Now, once the ballot is mailed and someone returns it, every ballot is scanned in, that signature is captured, and we look at the signature that's on the back of the envelope compared to what we have on file. So it's verified that that is that voter. If by some chance they forget to sign it, and we do have quite a few people that do not sign the back of the certificate, or their signature doesn't match what we have on file, then they are mailed an affidavit that they have the opportunity to cure that, either missing signature or mismatched signature. And they have until the second day after the election to get that affidavit back in, which they have to send in with a form of one of the identification that's required to send in with it. So they can do that. At early voting, once someone comes in, presents their photo identification, they're given their ballot, they vote it, they put it in the tabulator. Every night, those ballots are retrieved from the tabulator, put in a clear pouch that is sealed, documented. That chain of custody follows it back to our office where it stays until we open them, because I'm going to get to what we do with the ballots after in just a minute. Okay. But it's part of our audit procedures. So those are brought back every night, along with vote by mail ballots that people have dropped off there. And then once we receive them, we go through the process of verifying that that is that person that signed it and it's their ballot. So that's taken care of. On election day, you cannot turn in a vote by mail ballot there to be counted. Now, if you want to take it in there, they're going to have you tear part of it, either tear it in half, or so you can't feed it through the tabulator, and they will give you a ballot, a regular ballot that you will then take to the voting booth, mark it, and put it in the tabulator. Same thing as in early voting. That night when the polls close, that tub is brought out of the bottom portion of the tabulator. It is locked and sealed and brought back to our office. Once we have those ballots along the line, we are feeding all of those ballots once they're tabulated. After they're tabulated, very important, they're then fed through scanners, what we call our clear ballot audit system, for another verification that it is counting votes along with our tabulators. So at the end of the election, when we perform an audit, we do 100% of an audit. So every race on every ballot is compared to what went through on election night. And we have this other independent audit that we've scanned everything through that comes out. Is it 100%? No, but it is 99.99997 accuracy.
That's
there
impressive.
There is no fraud. There is nothing nefarious going on. We have two different systems that are counting those ballots. Now, we cannot release anything until after the polls close at 7 p.m. on election night, of course, or if by some, knock on wood, the hours are extended, then we have to wait till that happens before any results are released. But in everything that we do, the canvassing board oversees, the counting of the ballots, the canvassing of the vote by mail. Everything is done in the public. The public can come to our meetings. They can come and watch. They can see that there are so many checks and balances.
That's good. Mm-hmm.
Now. And, we used to do a manual audit after we certified the election where a random race was chosen. And then depending on what the race was, how big it was in the county, you had to require so many precincts were then chosen at random. We would then take all those ballots pertaining to that race in those precincts, separate them out. You had to separate them by the candidates. So you had to vote for this candidate A, candidate B, candidate C, however many. And then you counted those and you compared those to what went through on election night, 100%. But the first time around, we may not have been 100% because the humans counted it wrong.
Of course, and that's the thing. I think that people are when that conversation is taking place. It's about one, making sure that if you cast a ballot, it is counted and counted accurately. No, that's all right. But it is that more often than not the human side that gets caught. One of the things that's come up in previous elections, and you're talking about the machines and how they're counted is like, I put my vote in, I saw it, and it flipped it flipped who the vote was for on one or more races on the ballot. How is the tabulating done through the machine? And what are the chances that something like that happens?
That was before me, and you do hear that, but with having this clear ballot audit, independent, you can see they match. Mm-hmm. I mean, they're 99.9997% accuracy.
Yeah.
Nothing's being flipped.
Got it.
And one thing that if that happened, or if it could happen, it's you giving someone the availability to touch those machines that can do something to make it do that. All our machines are sealed, locked, to people from different parties. That's another important thing. People working at early voting, even in our office or on the polls on election day, are different parties. And if you don't think somebody is waiting to tell on somebody for doing something bad, it's just, you'd have to have the whole precinct, our whole office, every early voting site in cahoots to do something bad.
Yeah.
You, how many people can you get to agree on one thing, and to have, the more people you have, the harder it is to get everybody to agree to. It's just, there's so many security and safety measures in place. Not all one party is working a poll. Not all of the other party is. It's a mixed bag. And we're tasked to make sure that happens.
Yeah.
Good.
And I will tell you, everybody has some worth. They have worth. You're worth something, but you are not worth me or any of my staff going to jail for. I mean, it's just, I've been there. I visited it. I don't like it. I don't ever want to go back.
Yeah. And I would imagine this isn't a case of, well, Volusia County is the best in the country of doing it, and this is the model that everybody should be following, and everybody else is bad. I would imagine this is pretty standard across counties, not only across the state, but across the country.
Absolutely. We all follow the same statutes, the same rules, the same procedures. May each supervisor, each county set up a little bit different? Absolutely. I mean, there is a little leeway of what you can do. But Volusia County, I will tell you, has always been in the open, in the public. And another thing that our canvassing board does, we're in the room, the public is 5 feet away. They're right there with us. If we have to duplicate a ballot because it doesn't read in the machine, they're able to watch it. They sit right there and watch it. Our canvassing board will explain everything. It's always been in the open. And what our canvassing board has always done is we bring them out in tubs, our vote by mail ballots, when we present them to the canvassing board. They will do a random selection from each tub and compare the signatures right there in the public so you can see what was on the envelope and what we have on file. And you can see for yourself. We're not just pushing them through. They have to be verified.
Yeah.
And everybody goes through a signature training. Anybody that's looking at a signature, whether it be a petition, a ballot, everyone has to go through. It's a 2-hour training, and it's pretty intense of what you it's so everybody in my office is trained on that. It's not like they're just, okay, well, I see a little loop there. Okay, no. You have 3 points you've got to at least see, And the canvassing board, this is very important also, has the final say of whether or not that ballot is rejected if the signature is different. If they don't return that affidavit, then the canvassing board looks at it themselves. And we accept some. What an employee may be a little leery about, it doesn't look the same enough to them. And we have a supervisor that looks at it, and if they still don't think so, the canvassing board. Push it to the canvassing board. That's what we're there for.
Right. So I'll ask one final question, because this is kind of the curiosity of my mind. When you talk about the class and reviewing the signatures, is it as simple as someone signed with their full first name, middle initial, and last name, as opposed to their full middle name? Or is it writing style in terms of like the type of loop and how you cross your T and all of those kinds of things, kind of like a CSI election night kind of episode? What are how are you comparing the signatures, and what are the things that they're looking for?
It is the style. I mean, it's the slant of it. It's, do they drop below the line? Do they go up? Do they go down? How? It's not necessarily, you don't have to sign, I don't know, Kenneth T. Phelps or Kenneth Thomas, I'm not sure. But if you just do a T this time or you do Thomas the next time, if you can tell it is them, it's that person, it's the way they write. Some people will do the first initial and their last name, but yet they've signed on us, their first name. But you can tell that it's them, but you can tell. I mean, it's a lot when you're looking at them. Your first glance is a lot. It's almost like a gut feeling. But you can see that it is them.
Gotcha.
But it is looking for different aspects of how they sign, not what they've signed so much as, full name, initial.
Well, I for one appreciate that information because there's in the era of social media, there's so much out there, and that it's just wide open, and anybody's putting in anything they want, and it gets counted. And so I appreciate not only the service that you provide as the election supervisor, but your entire team. I know there's volunteers that are part of this. So kudos to all of you, and thank you for that service, because it is you are truly protecting one of the institutions of democracy and our ability to vote. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
All right. Well, David, thank you to you as well for all the work you do in putting our voter guide together. I think if there was a piece we want you to get out of this conversation, it is be comfortable in the process by which you're voting, and be comfortable with the information you have with which to cast your vote, and make an educated vote that most aligns with your beliefs and your values. So thank you to both for stopping in today and chatting a little bit about this.
Absolutely. It was fun. Thank you.
Yeah, it was.
Yes.
Thank you very much for helping us to get that message out. I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Our pleasure. So and then now our message for you as a listener and a viewer are two things. One, get out there, do your civic duty, and cast your ballot. Vote your conscience. Vote for what you think is the most appropriate leadership, not only for our nation, but for our state and for our city and our county, all of those things. There's amendments on the ballot. There's questions depending on what municipality you live in. Make sure you're well informed and cast that vote. The other vote I would ask you to cast is for Crest of the Wave in our podcast. Give us a thumbs up, comment on our social media presence, like, share. You can subscribe to our audio version on all of the major platforms. We're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon, iHeartRadio, you name it. Our video versions, if you have not already figured that part out, they're on our Daytona Regional Chamber YouTube channel. So you can subscribe to that and get updates for when new episodes are released. But with that, we're going to put a wrap on this episode. Hopefully it was informative for you, and put you in a position to go out and cast a great vote in this upcoming election. And we hope you're ready next time to catch the next Crest of the Wave. If you enjoyed this podcast, please be sure to subscribe wherever you like to listen to podcasts. For more information on our business community, visit our website at DaytonaChamber.com. Until next time, be ready to catch the next Crest of the Wave.